The U.S. and Iran trading shots in the Gulf, threatening an already fragile ceasefire. Today, the U.S. military says it blew up 6 Iranian small boats in the Strait of Hormuz after Iran launched, quote, multiple cruise missiles, drones, and small boats at U.S. Navy ships and commercial vessels.
The morning shift in the Combat Information Center of the USS Eisenhower had been quiet for almost 3 hours. Not peaceful quiet. The kind of quiet that makes experienced operators check their screens twice without knowing why. The Persian Gulf does that. It trains you to distrust silence. At 6:12 local time, the starboard radar operator tagged something at the edge of his scope and held it there with 2 fingers like he was afraid it would move if he let go. 1 contact. Then 3. Then the returns started multiplying the way fire moves through dry brush. Not all at once, but fast enough that by the time you realize what is happening, the front edge is already past you. By 6:14, the count was 23. By 6:16, it had passed 40. By the time the Surface Warfare Coordinator called out the formal contact report, the number had settled at 52 confirmed fast surface contacts bearing roughly northeast to east, spread across a front roughly 14 nautical miles wide, all of them moving with purpose and none of them answering the radio. The USS Eisenhower is a Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier displacing close to 100,000 tons fully loaded. It carries an air wing of roughly 60 aircraft. Its 2 reactors can sustain over 30 knots. It has been in continuous service since 1977. In the Persian Gulf, surrounded by Iranian coastline on 3 sides and a choke point ahead, it is simultaneously the most powerful conventional warship afloat and the least maneuverable object in the fight. The Iranians knew that. They had been studying it since before some of the officers aboard were born. 52 boats did not happen by accident. 52 boats is a document. It is a plan, a training program, a budget line, and a strategic argument written in fiberglass hulls and outboard engines. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy had been developing this playbook since the Iran-Iraq War ended in 1988 and left them with a fleet that could not compete with American surface warfare in any conventional sense. So they stopped trying to compete conventionally. They built something different. Something cheaper. Something that operates on a principle the United States Navy has had to take seriously for 30 years. If you cannot match firepower, match confusion. 6 nautical miles out, the formation began to differentiate. The Eisenhower's Combat Information Center was processing feeds from its own Spy-1 radar, from the 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers riding escort, from an E-2D Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft orbiting at 22,000 feet, and from a Seahawk helicopter that had lifted off the moment the contact picture started building. All of that sensor data poured into a common tactical picture, updated faster than any individual operator could track. What it showed was organized. The 52 boats were not charging in a single mass. They were arrayed in 4 functional clusters with different roles. The outermost boats ran wide arcs along both flanks, far enough out to force the escorts to track them without being close enough to engage immediately. Their job was not to attack. Their job was to stretch. A second layer pushed in behind the outer screen at medium range, holding positions that forced constant radar updates and split targeting priority between too many contacts to resolve cleanly. A third group held back entirely, sitting at the outer edge of the contact picture, low and quiet, waiting for a gap. And the fourth group, 11 boats, tight together, driving hard up the center, was aimed directly at the water the carrier was about to occupy. The person who designed that formation understood something uncomfortable about how American carrier groups defend themselves. The escorts cannot be everywhere at once. Every defensive asset assigned to a contact on the flank is an asset not covering the front. Every tracking solution opened against an outer boat is a processing load pulled from an inner boat. The swarm doctrine does not need any single boat to survive. It needs the aggregate pressure of all of them to create a moment when the geometry is wrong and one hull gets through. Just one. At speed. Loaded with whatever is lashed under that tarp near its bow. 52 boats at somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000 each. Call it $3 million total on the high end. The Eisenhower cost $4.5 billion. The math is not the point. The point is that the math does not have to work out. The point is that in a contested channel with commercial traffic on all sides and international attention on every radio frequency, the costs of miscalculation fall unevenly. One boat that reaches the inner ring and detonates does not have to sink the carrier. It has to touch it. The photograph, the video, the footage of smoke rising from a Nimitz-class hull in the Strait of Hormuz, that is worth more to Tehran than the boat, the crew, and the entire flotilla combined. They were not trying to sink the Eisenhower. They were trying to make her bleed on camera. 6:19 local time. The first radio challenge went out from the forward destroyer on channel 16, then repeated in Farsi. Unidentified small craft, this is United States Navy. You are approaching a military vessel. Alter course and maintain safe distance. No response. A second call. No response. The boats kept closing. At that point the radio was no longer communication. It was documentation. Every call logged, time-stamped, transmitted, and recorded for whatever comes after. 3 nautical miles to the east, a Panamanian flag tanker carrying liquefied natural gas was threading the shipping lane at 11 knots, keeping a polite distance from the American formation and radiating the very specific energy of a vessel that wants absolutely nothing to do with what is happening nearby. 2 more commercial ships had slowed or altered course in the last 10 minutes. The Strait of Hormuz moves roughly 20% of all globally traded oil on any given day. Right now that artery had 52 IRGC boats in it, and the men responsible for keeping it open were watching a countdown they could not pause. 6:21 local time. Lead elements of the center cluster inside 4 nautical miles. The Seahawk ran ahead of the destroyer screen and dropped to 50 feet, rotor wash cutting white lines across the water. Its nose camera sent live feedback into CIC, hull shapes low to the waterline, bows hammering through chop and throwing white spray, men in the open crouched behind whatever cover the hulls offered. At least 3 boats in the center group were running heavier than the others. Sitting lower in the water, moving slightly slower, but still closing. The weight difference was logged. One of the destroyers made a course adjustment, minor, 2 degrees left, enough to put its bow directly across the bearing of the lead cluster. The 5-inch Mark 45, gun mount trained forward. Not aimed at any single boat. Pointed at the space between them and the carrier. The geometry of the move said everything the radio calls had not managed to say. There is a line here. The line is where this ship is pointing. 6:23 local time. One of the outer boats on the starboard arc broke pattern. It cut hard inward, accelerating, threading the gap between 2 other boats that immediately shifted to follow. They were testing the escort's reaction time, seeing how fast the tracking solution updated when contacts started crossing each other's wakes. The answer came from the destroyer before the maneuver was finished. A burst of fire from the ship's close-in chain guns, not at the boats, into the water well ahead of them. A wall of white spray 40 meters wide. The boats pulled up, held position, watched. The test had produced a data point. The Americans would fire warning shots. The Americans had not yet fired at hulls. That information was now being processed somewhere in the center cluster. 6:24 local time. The Eisenhower had not changed course. Had not slowed. It was pushing through at transit speed on a heading that would carry it through the strait and out the other side if nothing interrupted it. The flight deck above was not empty. 2F divided by a -18E Super Hornets had been repositioned to the number 1 and number 2 catapults. Both crews were in the aircraft. Neither aircraft was airborne, because the moment a Super Hornet launches from a carrier in this situation, the photographs of that takeoff become the lead image in a story that Iran is very eager to write. On deck is pressure. Airborne is escalation. The Eisenhower was not escalating. Not yet. What was already airborne and had been for the better part of 2 hours was something the boats on the water could not see and the radar operators in the IRGC flotilla could not clearly identify. An EA-18G Growler, the Navy's dedicated electronic attack variant of the Super Hornet, had been circling the operational area at altitude since well before the swarm launched. Its ALQ-99 jamming pods and the more recently installed next-generation jammer systems have been working methodically through the Iranian electronic order of battle since before dawn, cataloging every emission, every radar frequency, every communication link associated with the coastal defense network along the Iranian shore. The shore batteries that had been listed in Iranian military statements as capable of engaging targets in the strait. The ones that fired the Nor anti-ship missile, a sea-skimming weapon derived from the Chinese C-802 that carries a 363-pound warhead and comes in low and fast and is genuinely dangerous against a target that has stopped maneuvering. The boats were not the main event. They were never the main event. The IRGC doctrine that produced 52 hulls in the water was not about 52 hulls. It was about forcing a large, slow warship to stop moving in a confined channel so that the missiles waiting on the shore had a stationary target inside their engagement window. Swarm plus missiles. Cape and sword. The boats dragged the carrier's attention downward and inward while the real weapon approaches from the side at wave-top altitude. The problem with elegant plans is that they require all the pieces to work. The shore batteries needed their targeting radar. The targeting radar was currently being looked at very carefully by a Growler crew who had been awake for 6 hours and were, at this point, essentially daring someone to illuminate. 6:26 local time. The center cluster made its move. 11 boats accelerated simultaneously, breaking from their holding pattern and driving hard for the corridor between the carrier's bow and the forward escort. The timing was crisp. The outer boats increased pressure on both flanks in the same moment. The middle layer boats moved to complicate the targeting picture. It was executed well. As an opening to a closing sequence, it was probably the best version of this attack profile the IRGC had ever run. The Seahawk was already repositioning before the center cluster hit full speed. It had been watching the formation's breathing pattern for the past 4 minutes. The subtle compression and expansion in the spacing, the way certain boats leaned slightly in the direction of intended movement before committing. The helicopter crew saw the acceleration coming 1 beat before it happened. That 1 beat was enough. The forward destroyer did not wait for the boats to reach the warning line. It had already moved, cutting across the corridor at an angle that narrowed the gap and forced the lead boats to either turn or close to within gun range of a ship that was no longer being restrained by anything except the order it was waiting for. The order came at 6:27. Graduated response authorized. Engage contacts demonstrating hostile intent. The language is precise and it matters. Hostile intent is not the same as hostile action. Hostile intent is a boat that has been warned repeatedly, is closing its speed on a warship, and is carrying visible weapons in attack configuration. Every one of those boxes had been checked for the center cluster before the engagement order was spoken. The first rounds went into the water. The lead boat did not stop. The second burst went into the hull. The boat erupted forward from its engine compartment, bow dropping, the crew thrown forward by the impact. The second boat veered left and almost immediately found the Seahawk's door gun walking rounds across its port side. It turned sharply, far too sharply for the speed it was carrying, and the hull skipped off a wave crest and came down hard. It did not sink immediately, but it did not close either. The third and fourth boats split around the debris. The third found the destroyer's gun mount tracking it. The fourth found the second destroyer, which had been holding the starboard arc and was now cutting inward to seal the corridor from the opposite side. The two boats were inside the geometry of two converging warships and had no good options left. One stopped. One turned and ran. In the time it took the center cluster's initial run to fail, roughly 90 seconds from the engagement order to the corridor being closed, the outer flanking boats had accomplished something. They had absorbed the attention of both escorts during the most dangerous moment of the engagement. That was their purpose. It partially worked. Two boats from the port flank got inside 3 nautical miles before the aft destroyer's close-in systems pivoted to cover them. But partially working and actually working are different outcomes. At 3 nautical miles with an alert escort and a Seahawk overhead, the math for a fiberglass hull runs out quickly. 6:30 local time. The formation was fragmenting. Not retreating, fragmenting, which is different. Retreating is organized. Fragmentation is 52 independent decisions being made simultaneously by crews watching the boats around them burn and stop and turn, recalculating their own odds in real time. Some boats still pressed inward. Some held at range. Some began to drift toward positions that were not quite attack and not quite withdrawal. The cohesion that made the swarm dangerous had begun to dissolve from the inside. In Tehran, someone was watching this on whatever feed they had and understanding that the planned second phase was not coming. The shore batteries had not fired. Could not fire. Not with a growler overhead that had spent 2 hours learning exactly what those systems sounded like when they began to power up for a launch sequence. The moment any Iranian radar along that coastline went to fire control mode, the growler would know before the operator's hand finished moving. And the strike package sitting on the Eisenhower's catapults would know roughly 4 seconds after that. The sword never left its scabbard. The cape was burning. 6:33 local time. A second push from the starboard flank, 7 boats, faster than the first group, using a different angle that exploited the shadow left by one of the disabled center cluster hulls drifting with the current. It was improvised. Whoever ordered it was working from what was left, not from what was planned. The Seahawk caught the angle change before the surface radar resolved it cleanly and relayed the bearing to the forward destroyer, which shifted to cover while the second destroyer maintained pressure on the remaining outer boats. The 7-boat group got inside 2.5 nautical miles. It was the deepest any Iranian hull had penetrated all morning. It lasted 40 seconds. The forward destroyer opened with its 50 caliber mounts, not a warning line in the water but direct fire on the lead hull. The boat came apart quickly. The 6 boats behind it had been using it as a pace vehicle and a visual reference, and when it disappeared they lost both simultaneously. The formation dissolved into individual boats making individual choices, none of which involved continuing toward the carrier. 6:38 local time. The last coherent Iranian element was a group of 9 boats that had held back throughout the engagement, sitting at the far edge of the contact picture, never committing to a run. Whether they were a reserve or whether the men aboard had simply watched what happened to the boats ahead of them and decided not to repeat it is unknowable from the outside. At 6:38 they turned and moved north.
Not fast. Not chaotic. Just north.
CIC logged the withdrawal at 6:41. The contact picture was still dense with tracks, disabled boats, debris fields, a few hulls moving slowly with no apparent purpose, but the organized pressure was gone. The swarm had spent itself. Final count when the engagement closed: 21 boats confirmed destroyed or mission killed. 14 more disabled or retreating under damage. 17 withdrew. The Eisenhower had not changed course.
Had not slowed.
Had not taken a single hit. Every aircraft on the flight deck was undamaged. Both escort destroyers were undamaged. The Seahawk that had been working the contact picture for the better part of 30 minutes landed back aboard with no issues, its camera having captured more footage of the engagement than any Iranian debrief would want to sit through. What the IRGC lost in material terms was real but not catastrophic.
Boats are replaceable. Crews are harder.
The operational cost of the engagement was probably manageable on a balance sheet. But doctrine is not a balance sheet item. The swarm concept had been Iran's asymmetric answer to American naval power in the Persian Gulf for nearly 4 decades. It had been wargamed, refined, updated, and in some form exported to proxy forces across the region. It was the theory that said small, fast, and numerous could beat large, slow, and expensive if the geometry was right and the timing held. The geometry was right. The timing held. And the swarm still failed, because the Americans had spent the same 4 decades learning how to fight it. The Growler overhead meant the missiles never came. The Hawkeye overhead meant there were no blind spots in the contact picture. The coordinated sector defense meant the escorts never had to choose between threats because every threat was assigned before the engagement started. The swarm doctrine assumes it can overload the decision cycle. The carrier strike group does not have a decision cycle for this scenario. It has a rehearsed response. Those are different problems.
6:44 local time.
The Eisenhower completed its transit of the narrowest point of the strait and the water ahead opened into the Gulf of Oman. The escort formation tightened out of habit, then eased. Somewhere behind them, smoke from multiple disabled hulls sat flat on the Persian Gulf in the morning heat, slowly spreading, slowly dissolving. The entire engagement lasted less than 32 minutes from first shots to withdrawal. The carrier never stopped moving.
52 boats went in.
Not one of them reached the Eisenhower. The shore batteries never fired. The plan that was supposed to make the world's most powerful naval force stop and bleed on camera produced nothing the IRGC could use. No footage of a damaged carrier, no dead American sailors, no strategic argument written in smoke and fire. Just the long ride home for whoever was left, back across the water they had crossed full of purpose less than an hour earlier. Iran had spent years building a doctrine designed to make the cost of American presence in the Persian Gulf unacceptably high. On this particular morning, the Eisenhower ran the numbers and came out the other side without a scratch. Whether that was reassuring or whether it was simply one data point in a longer conversation between 2 countries that have been doing this since 1979, that is a question the Strait does not answer. It just keeps moving ships through, one way or the other, regardless of what tries to stop them.